We have got a big legal question today, Rachel, and here it is. It's a true story.
Hmm.
Should the law reward someone who does something absolutely illegal, suffers terrible consequences as a result, but then sues because she didn't like the consequences?
That is the question.
That is the question today.
Hmm.
So, this is a true story about a young lady called Lorraine Leighton. Where did she live? I haven't got that.
She lived in London. She's
Okay.
25 years old and she was in a nightclub.
Well, London is the criminal capital of
It,
the world, according to one of the current American politicians.
yes,
But she was actually just a normal young British woman,
yeah,
wasn't she? Just out
absolutely.
with
Yeah,
friends in a club.
yeah. She
We've
was
all
a,
done that.
yeah, absolutely. She was a beautician. She, had a life outside of this whole issue.
Yes.
Um, she took an illegal substance.
Right, we have to say that, don't we?
Yeah.
We'd have to say beep if we said this.
Yes.
So not alcohol.
Yeah.
She's allowed to drink alcohol,
Yes.
but she took something else.
Yeah.
Right.
She took an illegal substance and she ended up in the hospital because of it. Because she had some serious adverse
Some
reaction.
serious reaction. Well, what I read about this is that she was in the nightclub when she did the deed
Hmm.
and she began to feel ill quite quickly.
Yeah.
So she went home where she collapsed. Now, when you say she collapsed, it sounds very dramatic,
Yes.
but I think it just means she became unconscious.
Yeah.
So, someone, I don't know, a partner, a husband, a parent, called for an
Yeah.
ambulance and they took her. I've got the name of the hospital, the North Middlesex Hospital. So, we're
Yes.
looking at North London.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Now, how did this end up in court? What
So,
happened at the hospital?
so she was left for quite a period of time before she was treated.
Oh,
Yes,
right. Is this in A and E?
it was in A&E.
We should
Um,
explain A and E,
yes.
Rachel, because most of our listeners will know the American English, the ER, the
Yes.
emergency room, and in England we don't say
No,
ER, do we?
it's the accident and emergency room. Um,
Accident and emergency. So
yeah.
we call it A&E.
Yes.
And you can wait quite a long time in
Oh,
A&E,
yes.
can't you? Because they triage
Yes.
you. They look at how urgent you are.
Yeah, and then
Um,
they put you on
and
a line of
yeah, a
importance
family
and
member just last week actually, and quite an elderly lady, even older than me, she fell and she broke her ankle,
it's a
which is
nasty
quite
one.
bad, and she must have been in pain. But when she got to A&E, I think she waited for about 5 hours
Yeah,
because they take the more urgent cases
first.
first. So Lorraine Leighton, with her illegal substance, got to A&E, but quite surprisingly, given
Yeah,
that she'd lost consciousness, she waited for quite a long time.
she did. And when she did get care, there was quite a few missteps.
Well, in my notes for the legal side of things, because I've been reading what her barrister
Yeah.
said, um, for the first 48 hours of her treatment, her care was substandard.
Yeah.
So we can use that word substandard in lots of situations. You know, if you receive a delivery of goods under a contract and they're not what was promised, you can say they're substandard. But substandard medical care is perhaps the most serious
Yeah.
type of substandard they can be.
Yeah.
In what way uh, was her care substandard? Do you know?
So she was given excessive intravenous fluids for
So they drip of fluids
yeah,
going into her
yeah.
arm. I wonder
Um
how that happened if they just weren't. monitoring or watching her
I don't
carefully
really
enough?
know. Um, and mandatory investigations to try and find out what some of the problems were, or perhaps why these effects happened, were
Hmm.
missing. They just didn't do them.
Oh, oh, they were missing.
Yes.
It's always interesting when evidence or written medical records
Yeah.
are missing. I think, you know, how would you explain reading between the lines? Because that's what I'm going to do.
It's kind of like making your own opinion from things that aren't purposefully there,
Yeah, yeah. It's
and forming an opinion.
reading the situation. So what I'm guessing is, and I might be wrong, is A&E in England is always crazy busy. That's
Yes.
probably internationally
Yeah.
true. It's a very hectic, high drama, running on adrenaline kind of place. And it seems like she was given low priority.
Yes.
Um, and that could be because of the nature of what was wrong.
Yeah.
And let me ask you a question. This is a very unfair question, Rachel, that you'll hate.
Good.
You're still smiling, but let's
Good.
try it. So you are the head A&E doctor
Mhm.
at your hometown hospital, and it's Saturday night,
Mhm.
and you've got someone who's taken an illegal substance in a
Yeah.
nightclub, and they are going in and out of consciousness.
Yeah.
You've got a family who've been in a car accident, a man who's had a heart attack, and a baby with breathing difficulties with a weeping
Mm.
mother. And that sounds, yeah. Now you've got four situations there, but you've only got three doctors
Yeah.
right this second.
Yeah.
Is the substance abuse one the one that has to wait? A terrible
I
question.
mean, those are some pretty brutal um situations.
It's a brutal choice,
It
and
is. It's
doctors
a
have
really
to.
hard choice. And I do think that on the whole, our NHS, which is our National Health Service, is fantastic.
It's fabulous. I
It's
agree.
incredible. Um, it's criminally underfunded, but that's a whole other discussion for a different
That's
day.
a whole other discussion. Yes,
Um,
it is.
but they have to make split decision, life and death choices, and that must be incredibly difficult. So
I
I
could never be a
no,
doctor. I'm happy to just stay in law.
yes,
I don't want anyone's life in my hands. That must
no,
be terrible. So, do you kind of agree with me that it could be that any A&E doctor, when faced with that kind of choice, might not have given Lorraine Leighton top priority?
yeah, I think, and I know this because I've done both pediatric and kind of workplace first aid. I know that the way that they categorize urgent is breathing issues or um kind of severe bleeding and that sort of thing. It's it tends not to be things like somebody coming in and out of consciousness, because
Yeah,
although that is important, it's not quite as important as the man who across from her who's, bleeding out rapidly
from
and
a car
yeah,
accident or a heart attack. And I think that was her downfall
yeah,
because in that first 48 hours, what the doctors didn't know was how seriously her brain
yeah,
was swelling, because that's what caused her ultimate injuries, wasn't
yes,
it? The swelling of her
yes,
brain. I've got a few of her ultimate injury written down. Do
yes.
you know any of them, Rachel?
So she suffered paralysis of her right side. She lost the ability to form words. swallow or write. So I assume that all of the muscle in her face must have been severely weakened. She suffered from epilepsy after the fact,
Wow.
and things like kind of chronic fatigue symptoms, like
Yes.
tiredness, mood swings. She lost some impulse control by all accounts, um, and she was proud.
25 years old, 25, her whole life
It's
in front of
terrible.
her. It really
I
is,
am
yeah.
25 now, and the thought of having my entire life upended like that is just crazy. It's awful, and you can only be sympathetic to somebody who.
What would you say to people listening who would say, but she took an illegal substance, so she brought this upon herself? I don't think that. I
No,
just want to be clear. But some people will be thinking it.
absolutely. Um, my I think I come from a very empathetic place with a lot of these stories that we talk about. And I see this woman as one of my very close friends who made a bad choice, simply.
Hmm. Yeah.
And whether or not you agree that she deserved what happened, because I don't think anyone would say, she deserved it, but I will say that people will probably say, well, she's not main priority because she's
Hmm.
done this to herself.
Yeah.
This,
Do you know what I would argue?
hmm,
Maybe the man who had a heart attack did it to himself. Maybe it was too much
yeah,
McDonald's and pints of
yeah,
beer.
maybe the
Maybe
person who was in the car
driving the car
accident,
was
it's
speeding.
one of
Yeah.
those things that I feel like substances are looked at and criminalized by the media and the public, and the people who
And the
do
law.
them.
Don't
Yeah,
forget. And the
yeah.
law.
And the people who do them and who suffer the consequences are almost demonized because of it. Um,
Yes.
and I don't come from that place. I don't think I have it in me to come from that place.
Well, we eat more junk food, highly processed
Processed
food,
foods.
than any other nation in Europe, and we're killing ourselves with eating
Oh,
absolute rubbish. Um, I don't see,
yeah,
personally, I don't see that it's different, but I'm not sure how a judge would regard what the hospital did. Um,
yeah.
can I just have a look at the legal case now? Be
Yes, of
very
course.
interesting if our listeners could tell us in the comments what they think would happen to Leanne Leighton in their system.
Yeah,
So she sued the hospital on the grounds of breach of the duty of care.
yeah,
The hospital have a legal duty to take care of the people who come in. They all should expect the same standard of service. And actually, the hospital admit that for the first 48 hours, she didn't get that standard of service.
yeah,
So there's a partial admission by the defendant in this case, the hospital. Um, Now, the legal question is, her barrister put forward a case saying, with appropriate management,
hmm,
her medical problem was eminently correctable.
yeah,
Eminently correctable, which means the swelling in her brain could have been stopped or corrected in that first 48 hours, or
yeah,
at least reduced,
yeah,
and it wasn't done. So, that breach of the duty of care in the first 48 hours is the grounds, the legal reasoning for her claim. And
mhm,
this is under the law of tort
yes,
in our system. It's a breach of the duty of care. Now, the hospital countered that argument by saying if she had received the best care in the world, it would not have made any difference because her brain was swollen.
Yeah.
So I think we've got a situation where each side has a medical expert witness saying conflicting things.
Yeah.
And this wouldn't be a jury trial, this would be a judge. We don't
Yes.
have juries in cases like this, really. It's very rare. Um, let's imagine we're the judge, right?
Hmm.
We don't have two or three in England, there's only one,
Yeah.
so we'll have to be individual judges. So we've heard a medical expert saying this was eminently correctable. And we've had another medical expert saying, no, it would have made no difference at all what those doctors did. Should we define eminently correctable before we?
Yes. It's like it's just very correctable. It could have been very quickly sorted.
Yes, eminently just means very,
Yeah.
but because a barrister wrote it,
Yeah. It's
that's why
eminent.
it's a more expensive word, isn't it,
Yes.
than very. So, Judge Rachel,
Mm.
are you going to award this young lady £500,000? Or are you going to tell her you did this to yourself? The hospital is not liable. What are you going to do?
I I am completely on Lorraine's side. I think that, she did make a mistake. She took substances she shouldn't have taken. But the failure to help her in a timely manner and do the things that were needed to do falls ultimately on the hospital. Like, if somebody comes in and, they're playing with things that they shouldn't play with and somebody gets stabbed, it is on the hospital to make sure that that person receives the best possible care.
It is, yeah. Well,
And
I'll be the Court of Appeal.
yeah,
So the hospital's appealed to Judge Catherine, and I'm going to tell them this: they still can't win.
yeah,
They still have to pay her.
yeah,
So we're in full agreement. But that doesn't happen in my classroom in
no,
Cambridge. Some students and lawyers get very, very upset at the amount that she got, which was £250,000,
I, yeah,
250,000.
I just think, this woman, I mean, her IQ went down to 69
Yeah.
points.
Yeah, her IQ dropped. Apparently, the normal IQ for an average person, we don't know any average people, do we? But apparently, the IQ is between 90 and 109.
Yeah,
So 90 is the lowest end of average, and she dropped to 69.
yeah,
So she probably wouldn't be able to live alone.
no,
She's probably not going to get a relationship. She's not going to have children if she wants them. Her life is completely upside down.
yeah,
Um, my only restraint on the award is this is a National Health Service hospital, which is free.
yeah,
We all pay for it with our taxes. So if anything happens to anyone, you can go to A&E and there's no bill. It's
yeah.
not like the United States. Um, so that
It's
£250,000
an awful lot of money.
comes out of the health budget, out of taxpayers' money. But that's the only limitation in my mind.
Yeah,
I would give it to her. I
yeah.
would.
I think the difficulty with it is because in America, am I right in thinking that it's like an individual doctor would be sued?
No, I think it's the hospital.
Would it still be the hospital?
Yes, because of vicarious liability in tort. And I think it's the same in the USA as here, where the employer is responsible for the
Mm.
actions of the employee. That's why I'm always saying to you, Rachel, don't go setting fire to anything or, you
I'm
know,
yeah, notoriously known for
assaulting
that.
anyone. If you're going to assault someone, please do it after 5 o'clock, because I don't want vicarious
Yeah.
liability. So in the USA, and I think in the USA, people sue the hospital more often than they do here.
Yeah. But I suppose
They've got more of a suing people
yeah.
mentality, haven't they, than we have.
But I suppose the difference there is that it's being funded by insurance-based, um,
Yes,
like an insurance-based policy, whereas
yeah,
here we pay
it's
taxes
taxpayers'
and it's
money.
yeah,
It's
and it
taxpayers'
goes
money.
towards the NHS.
So we've agreed we both give Lorraine the money,
Yes.
and we wish her well and hope that she's recovering. And she is.
Yes.
She's regained some of the lost skills. She can swallow again, she can move, she can write, which is all good.
Yeah.
The final thing to tell our listeners is so typical of the British legal system. No court gave a decision on this case. An out of court settlement was reached. And that's very typical here. Even after the case has started, you've got the judge in place, the witnesses. The judge will always say, have one more try
Yeah.
to settle this case.
Yeah.
So what happened was they settled for £250,000, 250,000. A judge has to approve that settlement
Hmm.
because the case has started. So that was done. But the judge was obviously sympathetic to Lorraine because he also awarded costs. So the hospital pays for their barrister and her barrister
Yeah.
and any court costs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you've reached the end of this video with us, congratulations. And please tell us in the comments how you think this would have gone in your country.
And if you disagree with us, I am
Oh, yes.
yeah. I'm always
Yeah.
aware that, especially when we do these sorts of things, that they're controversial. Um,
Yes.
and what
Yeah.
we think as kind of two very,
Liberal,
yeah.
left wing. Yeah. Yeah, we are.
Yeah, but we're also kind of in the same ecosphere where, we're both from the UK, we're both brought up in Western values. I'm curious as to see,
Yeah.
if people in other countries think differently. Um,
Well, please leave us some comments.
yes.
Do you agree with us that she should have received this money? Um, and we look forward to hearing from you, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye from Catherine and bye from Rachel.